Well, then, if you want to know what's going on with that thing, we've got you covered. We can definitely accommodate that. So we've got a massive number of sunspots on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk, possible additional coronal mass ejections headed Earth's way, as well as a coronal hole high-speed stream. We'll talk about it and lots more on the world's most comprehensive daily space weather show here at the Smash News Network, least busted name of news. That's a 24-hour video featuring ionized helium and ionized iron from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Let's take some closer looks here. This has been the most active sunspot region in the past 24 hours, and it is active indeed. So we've also got some CMEs that we'll be talking about here, and it's an exciting time as sunspot number is pushing back up toward 200. There are also a large number of solar filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk, which we will also cover here in some detail, like the Eugene Bagashoff prominence down there in the southwestern limb. There's a little closer view of that. So a big uptick in solar activity continues here as we approach the September equinox. Here's the western limb, and we've got some setting sunspots up there. The Tamatha-Skov filament is still partially intact, and we've got a prominence forming up there as well. That is the Scott McIntosh prominence. Yes, we've been naming solar filaments. We like to name them after living people because they are lively, like living people, like most non-zombified living people. There is the close-up view of that northwestern limb. And before we take a look at sunspots here, let's pause for station identification. You've reached the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. So here's yesterday plus today, and we've got multiple new sunspots forming right in the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk here. Right in here, a large sunspot forms, one decent size, one up here. Growth on this group. So again, the sunspot number here will be approaching, if not exceeding, 200 here before these groups in the northwestern limb set. Here's a colorized magnetogram. That is, once again, that's yesterday plus today, September 19th and September 20th to date. The Solar Dynamics Observatory HMI instrument colorized magnetogram. So there are those two new groups that just formed right on the center of the Earth-facing disk. Exciting stuff. And, by the way, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our new subscribers, etc. We're frankly surprised that you found the channel, but hey, congratulations. Do yourself a favor and press the like button. Actually, do us a favor and press the like button. If you're new to the channel, press the subscribe button. Otherwise, you might be missing the world's most comprehensive daily space weather content and the most detailed solar imagery you'll find in the known universe. Also, incredibly timely forecasts for things like CME impacts. Also, incredibly accurate weather forecasts, things like hurricane forecasts and so forth. You may have noticed the accuracy. It's all about understanding atmospheric physics, astrophysics, and so on. And guess what, folks? You've got plenty of capability to forecast your own weather from space down to the Earth level, which is what we're doing here at the Smash News Network. We are empowering viewers to have that capability. Today's featured product is from the Redbubble shop, Shartlight. Shartlighting. Have you ever had somebody attempt to gaslight you when they try to convince you that the past did not occur the way it actually occurred, but you realize that they're incorrect? They're trying to deceive you about how the past actually occurred. Well, that's called failed gaslighting. So an attempted gaslighting isn't really gaslighting. Gaslighting is when somebody does convince you that events happened differently in the past. Shartlighting is when they just reduce their own credibility by attempting to gaslight you and then failing at it. So it's a thing that happens constantly on the internet. People try to convince each other that they were wrong from March of 2020 on or something like that, right? So lots of shartlighting continues to go on. Pretty pathetic. Shartlight. Verb, meaning to fail to gaslight somebody only to crap on one's own credibility. Don't shartlight, folks. It's pathetic. attempted gaslighting. Gaslighting is evil, just like any sort of deception, so please just refrain. You can also find links to our Hemp Lucid shop below the video, so that's another one of our paid affiliate / sponsors. We still have sales going on CBD, mushroom gummy sleep stacks, stress stacks, full stack package, and immune stacks. So if you haven't tried out any of those, check those out. Also, check out the most popular products there, namely the water-soluble CBD tincture, followed by the CBD soft gel capsules. So some deals going on there. You can shop by solution. And of course, again, save some dough via our link, linked below this video as well as on the homepage. So check the description for that. Help support the channel via our affiliates / paid sponsors as we endeavor to keep this content free, publicly visible, and existent. We prefer to keep it free, publicly visible, and existent, folks. Today's featured product on the Amazon store is a 1 pound bottle there of curry powder. Don't buy your spice in little tiny jars in the grocery store and pay like $20 an ounce for it. Pay $20 for a pound of it, or $18.74 actually. And if you'd like the recipe for my curry chicken, you could probably find it at smashomash.com/forum, but we won't talk about that. Again, it's amazon.com/shop/smashomash. You can find various different deals there. Save some dough by buying bulk spices instead of buying tiny overpriced spices at the grocery. Once again, links below this video as well as on the homepage at smashomash.com. And welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. Again, congratulations on realizing the channel exists. We launched smashomash.com and a massive web ring starting in February of 2019. We are free speech purists. We encourage all legal speech. So your comments won't be muted or banned or deleted from our channel ever. That's evil. And let's see what's going on planet Earth, as we've got a number of erupting volcanoes to blast through. So Kluchavskoye continues to produce some lava fountaining and strombolian activity around the summit. That is on the Kamchatka Peninsula, Kluchavskoye. Mount Mayon in the Philippines also continues to erupt here, producing an unknown-sized volcanic ash plume. Luatolo also creating some new real estate as it effuses lava and explodes at the Lesser Sunda Islands there. And viscous lava flow continues to ooze out from the cone, advancing at a sluggish pace to the east. Semeru in East Java exploding, flight level 140. That's a 14,000-foot ash plume over East Java, Indonesia. Dakono on Halmahera, Indonesia, exploding as well. 8,000-foot ash plume. 22,000-foot ash plume over central Mexico from Popocatépetl. Go ahead, folks. You can say it aloud. Popocatépetl. Santiaguito exploding, flight level 170. That's a 17,000-foot ash plume, similar to Fuego's ash plume. Altitude 17,000 feet. As Fuego also explodes, also Nevado de Ruiz exploding. Flight level 210 over Colombia. Flight level 200 over Ecuador from Sangay. Flight level 150, a 15,000-foot ash plume over Ravenador. And Sabancaya in Peru also exploding, flight level 250. Please remember, folks, to not pole vault the caldera. Don't forget to refrain from pole vaulting the caldera. That could just be unhealthful, and we don't want to see that. We need the views on YouTube. So next seismic activity, and it's been moderate according to this 90-day bar graph. Let's call out quakes of a 5 or greater magnitude. So no major quakes over the past 24 hours, only a few that are in the 5 range. We will call out quakes of a 5 or greater. The first one on the list here is on the South Island of New Zealand. A 5.6 struck at 21:14 Universal Time yesterday on September 19th. Next, only about an hour later, a 5.2 strikes the Japan region there. The Izu Islands saw a 5.2 at 22:17 Universal Time. And then a long lull. And finally, a 5.0 struck Vanuatu this morning at 9:32 Universal Time. So all of the activity there on the western rim of the Pacific as far as 5 or greater magnitude quakes. And let's return to space, a frontier. So there is, now we're showing SDO 1700 angstroms and 335 angstroms. Let's switch the 335 to 171. Again, multiple new sunspot regions there will be named today as the sunspot number pushes up toward 200 once again. So for all of you folks who thought we were at solar maximum in January and February of 2023, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that's not the way solar cycles work. So anyway, let's move on to look at some stats. The 10.7 centimeter radial flux now up to 166 solar flux units. It comes from this area by my pointer, the upper chromosphere and lower corona, known as the transition zone or transition region. There is the 1-year graph of the radial flux depicted by the black line. The red line is the sunspot number, and you can see how proportional those are. Again, sunspot number is going to be pushing up toward 200 once again the next time this updates. Space weather enthusiast dashboard. This is NOAA's forecast for space weather, calling for some geomagnetic unrest to return to planet Earth late in the day on the 22nd. So starting off the equinox right, and by the way, there is another CME headed this way, which is going to arrive around the same time. This is before NASA or NOAA's forecast is out, so I'll just call it out right now. There's another CME headed this way, and possibly 2. And they look like they're at quite high speeds. So anyway, look for that to update soon, but there you go. There's your heads up on the incoming additional space weather here. And let's move on to Earth's magnetic moment from space. So this is the past 4 hours of magnetohydrodynamic pressure as modeled by the space weather modeling framework, and we're seeing an extremely diffuse but very high speed solar wind. So we'll get to that data here in a minute. Again, this is the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space out to about 12 Earth diameters, and we are seeing a subsiding of the coronal hole high-speed stream. Most of the plasma has been swept out of this portion of the solar system here, so there's a clear shot from the sun to Earth at the moment. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground for the past 4 hours. It depicts magnetohydrodynamic pressure. Not magnetohydrodynamic pressure, magnetic flux density at the ground level, nanotesla. And yeah, there you go. That's the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground as modeled by the space weather modeling framework there. That's University of Michigan Geospace Model v2.0. KP index here dropping back down to geomagnetically calm conditions. KP3 is the current situation. The planetary K index is a global average of geomagnetism, in case you're new to the channel and you weren't aware of this. And let's move to the real-time solar wind. Latest readings are about 500 kilometers per second for the solar wind speed. Solar wind density here extremely diffuse. According to the ACE there, it's showing up as barely half a proton per cubic centimeter. So that's, again, a very diffuse solar wind. However, it is still at high speed. There is very much a lack of material in between Earth and Sun at the moment. GOES magnetometers here are smoothing out as forecast. And of course, if you go back 7 days, you'll see smooth curves followed by geomagnetic storm spikes. Since we did have a KP7 event, a significant, you could even say major geomagnetic storm. Next, let's move to the top view ecliptic plane field plot. And this one is super important, folks, because it gives us some idea of what's happening, especially in the eastern limb. So it's showing us the polarity of the solar plasma here, and Earth remains in a South Pole current sheet. So there it is depicted in red. We may still be over a day out from the North Pole current sheet showing up. Sector boundary coming in the next 18 to 36 hours, I would suspect. So that is our top view ecliptic plane field plot. One of the best predictive values of any of the GONG data that we have. Here is the line of sight field plot, which brings us to coronal holes. So we do have a coronal hole high-speed stream expected to show up around the 22nd late in the day. I would tend to agree with NOAA's forecast there. However, what they're not forecasting yet is additional coronal mass ejection impact. So we've got some. There were some significant events that kicked off diffuse but high-speed solar winds. Anyway, before we get to sunspots, let's take a look at coronal holes. Here is the view. This is actually a 48-hour video, rather, from SDO. That's the past 48 hours, and you can see that coronal hole straddling the solar equator there, or just south of the solar equator. That will cause a short period of high-speed solar winds, likely on the late in the day on the 22nd. So that's the coronal hole scenario. And let's move to sunspots. So, yeah, like I said, major sunspot conflagration going on here. And, yeah, here's the flare probability monitor and the solar flare scoreboard. So, yeah, we've got 2 more groups that are going to get names. One of them is this one right here. And then there's also one, I believe it's right there. And we've got a very high likelihood of large solar flares, both around sunspot 3435, this area right here, and this setting series of sunspots in the northwestern limb. So that's what's going on in terms of flares. We have a fairly high probability of flares here in both of those locations. Let's take a look at some fantastically detailed imagery from SDO. Here's the HMI instrument along with the AIA 171 angstroms ionized iron. And let's subtract the 171 angstroms. There you'll see those 2 new groups rapidly form. Also some rapid growth of that sunspot north of the Earth scale there. I believe that is actually considered 2 sunspot groups, but with those new groups right in the center of the solar disk, we are expecting an uptick there in the sunspot number of at least 24. Yeah, so we'll be pushing 200 sunspots within the next 24 to 36 hours. That'll be before those groups set in the northwest. Those other groups will get named and counted. And again, that's a lot of sunspots. And you can only expect this to continue to increase in the next year plus, since we are nowhere near solar maximum. Here's the SDO magnetogram. And we're going to show an extreme close-up of that sunspot group there above the Earth scale, because that is the largest flare player, and it's moving right into the center of the solar disk here. It has not only grown, but it has what we call beta gamma delta class magnetic complexity. Beta gamma delta class sunspots are the most likely type of sunspots to produce large solar flares, and you can indeed forecast solar flares based on magnetic shear. It has to do with opposite polarity fields being close to each other. Basically a lack of proportionality in the sunspot. An irregularly chaotic looking sunspot typically is the most likely type to produce large flares. When you see just big umbrae that are similar in size and of opposite polarity, that is a less likely scenario to produce a large flare, if that makes sense. And let's move to energetic particles and solar flares, since we've got some. Let's see what's going on. So as far as solar energetic particle events, we ain't got none. The ghost proton flux remains flatlined here, having returned to baseline levels late in the day on September 18th. As far as flaring, the largest flare was an M4 around 2010 Universal Time yesterday evening. And don't worry, we've got some spectacular imagery of that for you. Here is SDO 131 angstroms. Another 24-hour video from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. There you see that large flare just north of the Earth scale. And if you'd like a closer look, I think we can accommodate you there as well. What's that? You want an even closer look? Smash staff, can we do that? Is that a thing? Apparently it is. So there is your extreme close-up of the largest flare of the past 24 hours. A couple M-class events happening in there. We'll also show 94 angstroms. The other best wavelength through which to view solar flare activity. 94 and 131 angstroms are specifically formulated to view solar flares. They take more images. They have a higher temporal resolution than the other AIA wavelengths from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. And here's the extreme close-up in 94 angstroms. So that's what's going on. Major conflagration here in solar activity. Once again, thanks for stargazing with us here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Let's take a moment to calm down here and take a look at what's going on overhead. So this is what's going on overhead Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. That's our star chart from skyandtelescope.org. You've got Venus being chased by Mercury, being chased by the Sun, being chased by Mars. They're all chasing Jupiter, which is setting around the western portion of the ecliptic at the moment. So a bunch of planets there overhead, as well as the closest star. That's what's going on here. Make your own star chart if you like, again at skyandtelescope.org. Here comes a solar system forecast. Here's where things are today. And by the way, those purple glows, those mean retrograde motion, as Earth is moving faster than these objects, which makes them move slightly slower than the stars in the background, which makes them in retrograde motion. Anyway, here is our one-week forecast for the solar system's heavenly bodies. Here's where things will be in a week. We'll be approaching the September full moon on the 27th. We will have a gibbous waxing moon. And let's take a look at the astronomy photo of the day. It's a scientific illustration of planet K218b. What's interesting about this is that it's got water and methane. Yeah, water and methane in the atmosphere. So when this planet moved in front of the star, we were able to get some chemical spectra. So water and methane were detected. Plus the planet is in the habitable zone, which means it's got liquid water capability on the planet. It's planet K2-18. Oh, that's the parent star. The planet is K218b. apod.nasa.gov if you want to see that artist's rendition of the solar system, the stellar system in which it lives. Anyway, next is coronal mass ejections. And we had one that occurred around 2000 yesterday evening, which has a likely earthly directed component. So there are multiple events actually happening here. One of them is on the far side and one of them is on the Earth side. Again, it is a high-speed CME. So we're expecting this to arrive as early as the 22nd. So the 22nd might be an interesting day in that we'll have a coronal mass ejection impact as well as a high-speed coronal hole wind. So that's 100 frames from yesterday. Here are the frames from today. There is at least one other CME there happening. That one's popping off around 7 o'clock this morning. Let's take a look at some more detailed imagery of that. So here's Soho Lasco C2 and C3. We're going to zoom in closer and closer here on this in a minute. All right. right, so here are our close-ups. And first of all, let's pause these around 2000 yesterday evening. So there you can see that CME coming out of the southeast around 2130. That one may be on the far side, but there's a second event here around 2300 coming out of the northeast. That one might be on the far side, and we're going to figure that out here in just a minute. So there's the aftermath of that, and then this morning, another event there out of the east. There's 1030 on the C3. There you can see it coming out around. Looks like there was a flare involved also, so maybe some relativistic particles there striking the LASCO. And again around 6:30 or so, that CME popping off. So that also could have an earthly directed component. Let's take a look at some more data here by checking out stereo A. Yeah, stereo A. It's giving us a little bit more of a better angular view. So here's stereo A, and it's what? Here we go, that's better. I had stereo B up there, which stopped functioning in September of 2014. All right, so what do we have here? Stereo A. Here's the raw imagery. Let's pause the difference imagery. So first we'll go back to yesterday, and we got like 12 hours of missing data here, so that's not helpful at all for the earlier CMEs. The one from this morning, here you can see it popping out of the east. Preliminarily, it looks like the far side. So there it is around 8:38. Another event there on the east. And let's move to our custom coronagraphs, because this is going to give us a much better idea of if those CMEs are earthly directed or not. So here's a 24-hour video featuring SDO 193 angstroms, SOHO LASCO C2 and C3 all synchronized. And let's look for plasma motions. We certainly do see some here. So one of those CMEs does have an earthly directed component. Again, we're expecting a CME impact as early as really late in the day on the 21st to early in the day on the 22nd, as this is clearly a high-speed event. When you get a little bit closer, you'll be able to see right in this area right here, right around that active sunspot. And there is also an indication that there's an event happening on the far side of the sun too. Now, occasionally this does happen where we see events on both sides of the sun at the same time. Sometimes you see flaring on the far side and the Earth side at the same time. This is sort of a common occurrence as waves ripple across the surface of the sun. If you get a little closer, you'll be able to see this flash right there. You can see a flash. That is typical of a far side event. However, you will see some plasma motions right in here just preceding that CME. So another Earth-directed CME there, folks. And let's zoom in all the way and just show the 193 angstroms wavelength. Definitely some plasma motions happening there. And we'll also show, let's add 304 angstroms to that. So there's a CME on the far side and on the Earth side, which makes it as deceptive as it could possibly be. Most of the CME will miss Earth to the southeast, but a small component could strike Earth. We won't be surprised to see it strike Earth, as it is close enough to the center of the solar disk when it occurred. Again, expecting a minor CME impact here on the 21st, late in the day, or perhaps early in the day on the 22nd. So that's what's going on. Those are the facts. And let's talk about filaments, since those are the potential newer coronal mass ejections. We've got a ton of filaments over here on the eastern limb. And by the way, it looks like that part of the reason why we think that there's an Earth-directed CME here is because the Reed-Timmer filament has vanished. That is because it's headed our way. That is the filament that blasted off. It didn't collapse. It ejected. So part of it is still intact there. We also still do have the Tamethyst-Scove filament still largely intact up here. But a number of filaments here in the southeast, also adjacent to this active sunspot there, so the potential for additional CMEs is very high moving forward. In fact, you can expect about a 100% chance to see additional CMEs in the next 24 hours. The question is, will they have earthly directed components? We'll cover it. Here's the grayscale imagery as well. This will show the prominences that we talked about earlier, like the Scott McIntosh prominence right here and the Eugene Bagashov prominence down here. There's also another one rising up here, so plenty of filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. And before we get to our bonus features segment, let's take a look at the last about 2.5 hours here from the GOES 16 SUVI, and there's a CME happening as we make the video. So that looks like it's certainly going to eject some material there. It is sort of behind the northwestern limb. At the moment, it's only a prominence. It's about to become yet another coronal mass ejection. So what can I say? When we say there's like a 100% chance of CMEs, we're not kidding. We realized we could forecast coronal mass ejections back in 2018, I think it was, 2019, and nobody seemed to care. It didn't boost our views at all on YouTube. You'd think the ability to forecast CMEs before they leave the solar corona would be a big deal, but apparently it wasn't. So we just stopped doing it because what's the point? We realized that we were forecasting them, and it was like, oh, okay, sure you are. All right, whatever you say. It was the accuracy was almost 100% right for over a year. So anyway, by the way, if you want to name filaments, go do it over on Twitter. Yeah, follow us over on Twitter. And whatever you do, don't join a cult, because we will find you and we will shame your cult. So help us reach 500 followers over there on Twitter, thanks to our new followers. Congratulations on realizing the Twitter account exists, as censorship reigns supreme on social media, an evil, un-American, ridiculous, and fascistic practice. Here come bonus features, and we do have some satellite charging hazards here. Check it out, satellite charging hazards, folks, of the surface charging variety over the central Pacific Ocean. So that's low-energy electrons building on the outside of spacecraft, and it could cause some communications failures, some oddities in your GOES West satellite imagery, perhaps. Don't be surprised if you see it. It's not the Russians, it's not the Chinese, it's not HARP, it's not chemtrails, it's not geoengineering, it's not EMP weapons, it's not directed energy weapons. It's electrons building up on spacecraft, causing communications breakdowns. Here's the electron flux, which is measured at the F layer of the ionosphere, by the way. And we're expecting an electron storm here, so expect these levels to rise well above the alert threshold there, the Spaceweather Prediction Center alert threshold. And the GOES electron flux is measured by the GOES 16 and GOES 18. From their geosynchronous near equatorial orbits, they use radiography to measure that at the F layer of the ionosphere. There is the 1-year chart to contextualize that. Again, we're expecting quite significantly high levels here of electron flux going forward, and NOAA tends to agree. So there you go. Late in the day on the 21st when the CME impact arrives, and on the 22nd when the coronal hole high-speed stream arrives, we're expecting this to crater back down again. So there's NOAA's forecast represented by those green boxes for the electron flux. Again, it is measured at the F layer of the ionosphere, the bridge between Earth and space. It's located at about 300 kilometers of altitude, and here's what's shaken at the F layer. So there's the raw vibrational frequency, and things are calming down in the ionosphere as geomagnetic storm conditions subside rapidly. We've got a very diffuse solar wind here at the moment. Again, it is very clear in between Earth and Sun. So here you'll see a lot of the red leaving the map here. This is the anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. So at the beginning there, you see a lot of red, and you'll see that subsiding as the ionosphere relaxes and puffs back down to its non-geomagnetic storm type dimensions. It puffs up when we see geomagnetic storm conditions, and now it's puffing back down, as you'd expect, as that CME impact geomagnetic storm condition wasn't really all that long lasting, so the ionosphere here subsiding as the system tries to reach static equilibrium like everything in the universe. Anyway, here's the latest image. 1300 universal time ionogram looking very normal there. 1300 universal time anomalygram also looking quite normal. We also show the total electron content. This will show you the most likely places for GPS errors. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with distances in miles to these things. Here's a count of electrons from the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt down to ground level. And they are looking quite organized here. So GPS is working well at nighttime there on the equatorial portion of the planet. So no major total electron content anomalies there. And we'll also show the anomaly from the 10-day average over North America to show a little bit more detail here. And we aren't really seeing any high electron count anomalies over North America, mainly low electron count anomalies. So that is anomaly from the 10-day average. It's literally a count of free electrons from the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt down to ground level through the outer plasmasphere, inner Van Allen belt, and the ionosphere. We'll close out space weather with the latest intensitygram and latest solar magnetogram. And look at the number of sunspots. I'm not going to go over these in depth. We don't want the video to be too lengthy. Most likely place for large flares is certainly this area here, followed by the northwestern limb. And it looks like we have another sunspot forming up here. This showed signs of life yesterday and the day before. Now it is a new sunspot. So at least 3 new sunspots likely to get names today. 2 of them forming right near the center of the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk, as the sunspot number pushes back up once again to 200. Now, quick side note. If you enjoy the content and you prefer to see it remain existent, publicly visible, and free for all to view. Did I miss something here? Let me go back. I apologize if I had the Smash News Network logo there on the screen. Here's that. And if you want to support the channel, become a member of the Smash team. We send out email alerts about things like disasters, even to bronze level Smash team members, which cost you $0 a month. There's also a silver level and a gold level if you want additional content. If you want to support the channel that way, it's like Patreon, only superior. It's our own website. We built it ourselves, launched back in October of 2021. So thanks to the Smash team. These videos are brought to you in part by the Smash team, also at massive personal risk and expense by Smash staff and I. And let's move to meteorology. Because you too can forecast your weather. We empower our viewers to do so. It's all about understanding the physics. Proper, plausible physics prevents proliferation of pathetic pseudoscience. Here are the largest waves in the world. This depicts wave height and surface winds. And once again, the largest waves in the world here are in the North Atlantic. 35 footers there. That is the stormiest sea in the whole world, the North Atlantic. Even the Southern Ocean is more chill than the North Atlantic, where we've got 35-foot waves. And let's take a look at the Earth's air masses. Surface winds of the east are looking like this. Jet streams of the east are looking like this. Jet streams of the central world depicted here. Surface winds shown here. surface winds of the west, and the jet streams of the west. There you go. And guess what? We are expecting a major low to form here off the coast of the Carolinas. Check it out. This is the mean sea level pressure map. Here's the GFS forecast, and check this out. As this moves forward, you're going to see a strong low here form off the coast of the Carolinas, and that's going to move up the east coast. If it moves a little bit to the west, it's going to bring massive flooding rains to the eastern seaboard. Let's just advance this a little further here. There you can see that low forming off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. And then by Saturday, it could crash right into North Carolina. So that's quite a strong low there. That's the GFS forecast. The Euro forecast here places that really much farther to the south. Check it out. Huge disparity there. GFS forecast has that hundreds of miles farther north. That's the Euro forecast for 10 o'clock on Saturday. There's a GFS forecast for 10 o'clock Saturday. That will bring some major rains to Virginia Beach, if that indeed occurs. Next, we'll show clouds and fog. This is our shortwave radiation map. That's what's going on over the Americas. And next, our weather.gov map. Check it out. We've got some frost advisories there in California and Nevada. Not Nevada. California and Oregon, my bad. Frost advisories there. And also some flood watches in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and it looks like Missouri and Kansas. Here comes some forecasts. This is your smoke forecast from firesmoke.ca. So lots of smoke around Northern California especially. Some of it making it all the way down the entire west coast. Also the Great Lakes and the areas south of the Great Lakes there to expect some smoke. Firesmoke.ca if you want to monitor it yourself. And here come some forecasts for the weather. Here's the GFS model. That's a 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast. And you can see a huge band of rain there moving up the east coast. It looks like this forecast actually has most of the rain there staying out in the Atlantic. Also some snow coming to places like Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. Also Washington and Oregon, expecting some snow there. Some wet early season snow there occurring first thing in the fall. Anyway, here is your 10-meter wind and mean sea level pressure forecast. Again, it is based on the 72-hour GFS model. And here's the total accumulated precipitation forecast, expecting like 4 inches of rain there for portions of Oklahoma, also South Dakota, Nebraska. Some very heavy rains there. Also North Dakota, expecting some 4-inch portions. 4 inches of rain there coming to large sections of the central U.S. That's your GFS 72-hour total accumulated precipitation forecast in inches. And here is the temperature anomaly forecast. The same model, the GFS 72-hour temperature anomaly forecast. We show 72-hour forecasts because they tend to be accurate. Humans, we aren't able to forecast the weather out for 4 days. Some people think we can forecast the climate out for 50 years. Go figure. So we've got some huge high temperature and some huge low temperature anomalies across the U.S. There it is. That's anomaly in degrees Celsius. We'll be seeing anomalies over 16 degrees C above normal around the Great Lakes and over 16 degrees C below normal around the Pacific Northwest. Facts. They may be convenient. They may be inconvenient. I don't know. I just cite facts. And check it out, we had some very heavy lightning around the Caribbean. All around Florida there. And also moving into Arkansas over the past 10 hours. Here's a real-time lightning map, and we do have some terrestrial strikes, I think. Let's see where the thunder's rolling in. So northeast of Dallas, we've got some lightning strikes. The Choctaw Nation there, seeing some relatively minor activity there. Next time you hear thunder, check out lightningmaps.org. It could save you, or it could make you frighten the natives into thinking that you're Zeus or Thor, or perhaps a horror movie villain who can summon lightning or something. Yeah, you can forecast thunder with lightningmaps.org. It's just fantastic. We're going to close out this video. Well, check out the heavy precipitation here at southern Alaska once again. Heavy bands of moisture there showing up around Anchorage. Anyway, here's a quick look at Hawaii, where things are looking clear, and we will focus on the lower 48. So there's that system. It is moving very slowly there across Arkansas. It's almost standing still. So I suspect there's going to be some dry mass of air ahead of it. What do you think? Let's check some other maps, folks. Here is clouds and fog. I suspect that is butting into a wall of dry mass of air. And it is very minor, actually. So this system, I mean, there is dry mass of air way over here. That is a relative high. This is a relative low. And anyway, that's your water vapor map. That should clear things up as to how things will be moving. If your Doppler's not clear, there's your Doppler ground-based systems that show vertical motion in the air column. Some weather here about to move across Lake Michigan toward Lake Erie, Cleveland, etc. Here is clouds and fog, depicted by the 3.9 micrometer infrared radiation satellite, the shortwave radiation satellite from the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite. And here is the water vapor map, which is totally sweet. That'll clear things up when your Doppler is unclear. Hopefully we've cleared things up for you here, as it's another exciting edition of the Daily Space Weather Show. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, congratulations on realizing the channel exists. Don't forget to press the like button. If you're new to the channel, do yourself a favor and press subscribe. And sign up for email alerts, because a lot of people complain that they don't see our videos showing up in their subscription feed on YouTube. So email alerts will prevent that. We've created the solutions to these problems. However, it's up to you to follow them. Anyway, see you soon. In the meantime, I'll have been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash and Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back.